Thousand Autumns, is a Meng Xi Shi novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 78. Wherever the three characters of Yan Wushi's name wound up, they carried a frightening gravity despite the fact that these three knew that the five great masters had made an attempt on his life, and despite the fact that they knew that his Wujiang was almost completely lost and his present strength was not as great as it was before. They hardly needed Sang Jingxin to personally show up. The strength of these three were more than enough to rely on to bring him down. However, even as they thought this, not a single one moved at all. An undercurrent surged up from within Hehuan sect. From the movements of Xiao Se and the rest, anyone would be able to see this. Yan Xiao once lost at Yan Wushi's hands. Additionally, he had lost in a completely miserable state. This time, he arrived not because of the rumored lost volume of the Zuyang Ce in Yan Wushi's possession, but because the day of his crushing defeat had such a deep impression upon Yan Xiao. Though he appeared composed and undisturbed before Yan Wushi, something that suggested otherwise arose in his heart. Xiao Se was Yuan Xiaoxiu's disciple. However, he wanted to take Yan Wushi's head to Sang Jingxin and take credit for killing him. However, seeing that no one else moved, he did not move either. All four people faced each other, creating a sort of strange situation. Hehuan sect clearly had the upper hand, however, they decided not to act first. Yan Xiao narrowed his eyes. He observed Yan Wushi closely, waiting for him to make the smallest misstep. Yan Wushi finally moved. But he did not move towards Xiao Se or Bai Rong, who stood before him, and he certainly did not move towards Yan Xiao, who stood behind him. Instead, he immediately soared into the air, like that of a breeze lifting one's sleeves, like that of a crane preparing for flight. Xiao Se's expression immediately shifted. Not good. Who could have imagined that the great Zongju of Huanyu sect would perform such a two-faced act just to baffle his opponents? Xiao Se was ordinarily a gongzi that carried himself with intelligence and elegance. But at this moment, he could not help but curse loudly, "Don't you go anywhere, you bastard!" A roar of laughter echoed in midair. "As you wish." His silhouette appeared as though from thin air. However, within the blink of an eye, he had already arrived before Xiao Se's eyes. And Xiao Se was not yet able to see what sort of move the other man was going to make, before the man suddenly struck his chest with an open palm. Xiao Se was caught off guard. He already did not have time to hide away, and could only brace himself for the impact. They each engaged in close combat. The other man's true chi was like the surging waves of a river, relentlessly turbulent, nearly engulfing Xiao Se's true chi. It flowed with such arrogance and tyranny, resembling that of its owner so much that it was moving to see. They had heard that Guang Lingxin had taken advantage of the flaw in Yan Wushi's core when the five great masters besieged him and even caused him to suffer even more serious injury. Yet could it be that after he had come into possession of the remaining volume that he could have healed the flaw in such a short amount of time and even strengthened his Wujiang to another level? This thought flashed through Xiao Se's mind within the span of time it took to light a flame with flint. He was astonished, and then a sharp pain spread through his right arm. He could not help but shout out wretchedly as he retreated backwards. However, the bone in his right arm had already been completely broken. The wound became entangled with that of his chest, as though he had been viciously struck by a hammer. Xiao Se coughed up a stream of blood, and could only collapse towards the ground. He turned his head and once more vomited several mouths of deep red blood. Xiao Shixian. Are you all right? Bai Rong shouted, surprised. She flew to his side to support him. Every member of the demonic sects was selfish and held no regard for others. Let us not even mention how Bai Rong and Xiao Se have long had problems with one another. If this were an ordinary day, Bai Rong would have certainly taken great pleasure in seeing Xiao Se's unfortunate luck, and might as well have dropped some stones on him while he was down. In truth, it really wasn't her style to step forward and support him by the arm. However, this way she could easily avoid facing Yan Wushi head-on, so she didn't mind exhibiting a false sense of fraternal affection. Xiao Se's setback caused Yan Xiao to delay his attack somewhat, despite the latter having been prepared to strike earlier. However, he still chased the other man and obstructed his path. Yan Zongju, for what reason are you running off in such a hurry? Don't you want to reminisce about the years past with your old friend? I would also like to reminisce with Yan Zhanglao. I must ask Yan Zhanglao, are you presently free? The person who responded was not Yan Wushi, but someone from behind Yan Xiao. Upon hearing these words, Yan Xiao did not turn around. Instead, he leapt to the roof of a building, so as to look down on this newcomer. If it isn't the stray dog coming around once more, he said with disdain. Shen Qiao carried his sword on his back, walking towards them with an unhurried pace from the other end of the street. His hair, raven black, his clothes, sky blue. His silhouette, tall and elegant, resembled that of an immortal. Yan Zhanglao has yet to repay to this poor Daoist the debt of the 2 lives he took at Bailong Temple, Shen Qiao said. Do you still remember? I had heard for a long time that the person to whom the former Zhangjiao of Xuandu Mountain, Qi Fengge, handed his legacy down to was a man whose Wuzhong was unrivaled in all of Jianghu, Yan Xiao said. A pity that he lost and fell from a cliff in his battle with Kunyi, and was never well regarded since, and can only rely on Yan Wushi to protect him. The way I see it now, it seems that the rumors are not necessarily untrue. Shen Qiao said, indifferently, then I cannot help but wonder if Yan Zhanglao has heard that Kunyi, upon causing trouble at the Wuxia sect of Taishan Mountain, met his death by my sword. Yan Xiao's face betrayed a faint look of astonishment. After Kunyi's death, the Wuxia sect suffered an almost total collapse due to the internal disorder from before, and has been occupied with recuperating. The Tuju people could not possibly take this matter and make it public. As a result, they concealed Kunyi's death. Everyone still believed that he had returned to Tuju. No one could have imagined that he was killed by Shen Qiao. Bai Rong laughed sweetly. It's hardly been a few months, yet Shen Lang's Wuzhong has progressed so. It's truly something worthy of celebration. However, our Zongju has already ordered us to take the remaining volume of the Zuyang Ce from Yan Wushi. Sang Zhanglao and Bai Yun Zhanglao are on the way here now. Shen Lang, your Wuzhong is certainly strong, but you're certainly not yet capable of taking on all of Hehuan sect, are you? And besides, this matter doesn't even concern you. Why don't you just stand back and watch? Since you've already come, there's no need to leave. You might as well stay a while. Yan Xiao said coldly. Yan Xiao's nickname was the Blood-Stained Monk. His Wuzhong was the sort that was both reserved and gentle, yet severe and ruthless. However, the sight of the fingers of his right hand bent into those of a claw and thrust in Shen Qiao's direction, sending a cold breeze into his face, resembled that of a demon's cry. All around him were mountains of corpses and oceans of blood, no different from that of the underworld. They were immediately submerged in a foreboding omen that filled all the sky with a rush of dread and hopelessness. Shen Qiao leapt backwards, unsheathing the Shan He Tongbei sword at the same time. Immediately his Jiankai was like that of a rainbow, rising up to illuminate the clouds, enveloping Yan Xiao's imposing figure in but a moment. Yan Xiao chased after him relentlessly. Both his hands rushed in the direction of Shen Qiao's attack as though to dispel it. He even performed 3 or 4 open palm maneuvers, each one as fast as lightning, unable to be completely seen. Each maneuver came down in torrents like that of an ocean, each wave stronger than the other. There was no opportunity for his opponent to react. Though Yan Xiao was not considered one of the 10 greatest martial artists in the world, this did not mean that his Wuzhong was ordinary. When Yan Wushi had gone into seclusion for the past 10 years, Huanyu sect's central focus was operating within the imperial court of northern Zhou, while Fahing sect went further out into Tuyuan. Only Hehuan sect remained in the central plains, having developed especially well under the power of the country of Qi. And Yan Xiao played a significant role amongst the many members of Hehuan sect, one that was equal to even that of Sang Jingxin. Clearly, this simply wasn't because he happened to be pretty. Shen Qiao carried his sword in his hand. The blade of the sword cut a length that filled the sky, its light dazzling the eyes. In a moment, all was inverted like a reflection upon a body of water, as stern and cold as ice and snow. Following it was the sense of murderous intent, engulfing everything in its path, passing through like that of a chilled wind brushing through trees. Though this battle was only then becoming satisfying to watch, it wasn't as though the other was going at a leisurely pace. Xiao Se and Bai Rong, standing side by side at first, started towards Yan Wushi, before each one blocked him from in front and behind, leaving him unable to escape. As he fought with Yan Xiao, Shen Qiao caught sight of Bai Rong and Xiao Se's offense. He could not help but knit his brow. The two of them were the greatest masters of Hehuan sect's youngest generation. Without considering that of the elders, it was quite certain that one would have to say that their Wuzhong was the best. Xiao Se and Bai Rong's natural talent were similarly great. Every time one would meet them, it would seem as though their Wuzhong had once more improved and reached yet another level unceasingly. Especially Bai Rong. When Shen Qiao had first met her, the girl had only been one notch above ordinary, but now, her skill had improved vigorously. Her signature move, Qingli Seal, had already attained its highest perfection. Her lithe and graceful figure concealed such murderous intent that was difficult for anyone to guard against. Shen Qiao was very aware that Bai Rong had been merciful to him several times. Earlier, she had secretly clarified, with great intensity, that Sang Jingxin was on his way, so as to force Shen Qiao not to pay attention to such matters that did not concern him. However, this softness she treated Shen Qiao with was completely lost on Yan Wushi. At that moment, she was cooperating with Xiao Se against him, their every move filled with the intent to kill, more and more forming a tight encirclement around him. They shared some implicit understanding of something they did not keep from the other, and had simply cornered Yan Wushi all around. Because Yan Wushi had suddenly inflicted such wounds upon Xiao Se, the two of them were anxiously vigilant. They were unwilling to use all of their energy, however, only Shen Qiao understood that Yan Wushi's strength was limited. He had not yet recovered, and certainly was unlike that of when his skill had flourished. To have been able to seriously injure Xiao Se was already the limit of his skills. To face off with Bai Rong, whose skill had improved significantly, was already something he would only barely be able to do. If they lingered on for too long, the two of them would certainly be able to sense out where everything exactly stood. They certainly would not hesitate any longer and would use up all of their strength to deal with Yan Wushi. On top of this, Shen Qiao also had to deal with Yan Xiao, which made it so that he was inevitably unable to manage both things at once. Having thought up to this point, Shen Qiao no longer hesitated. His strength surged up to its utmost point, he dismissed any other distracting thought, and immediately entered the realm of Jian Xian. In a split second, the light of his sword shone endlessly, changing all color of the sky and earth as though filled with the fury of lightning. The clear light shimmering from the rivers and oceans was condensed into this single sword. His person outside of the sword, yet his heart lay within. Once at Jian Xian, every living thing was as though hollow and vacant. Yan Shao's stern expression changed quickly. He immediately pulled his hands away and began to retreat, not daring to rush into the cutting edge. However, the moment the sword's blade shone, it cannot possibly be retracted. His Jianqi rode upon this white light and rushed towards Yan Shao mercilessly, firmly stopping him. Accompanied with what sounded like thunder, like the endless waves of water, his sword carried within it the power to disperse everything beneath the skies, despite its unsteady first reveal. The moment he brandished this sword, Shen Qiao did not advance, nor did he retreat. Instead, he flew towards Bai Rong. The three of them, Bai Rong, Xiao Se, and Yan Wushi, circled one another in a deadlock, subtly in balance. Yan Wushi's strength had almost certainly been reduced over some time, or else he would not have allowed for such an impasse. The longer that time went on, Xiao Se and Bai Rong became inevitably suspicious. However, a teal silhouette glided past them, and took Yan Wushi away. After seeing this, the three of them naturally chased after them. However, because Xiao Se had sustained such a serious wound that he was unable to pursue them closely, only Yan Shao hung close to them from behind, unwilling to let the two of them out of their sight. "You go on first. Get to that forest we passed through before entering the city, I'll hold them back." Shen Qiao spoke his words quickly before directly shoving Yan Wushi in front of him. He did not wait for his reaction and turned around, rushing in the direction of their three pursuers. Yan Wushi turned around, and gazed deeply at him. He said nothing, before turning back and leaving. Yan Shao watched as his target faded further and further into the distance, becoming more anxious as Shen Qiao stood in front to block him from advancing further. The style of his palm maneuver was filled with bloody malice, every move aimed at Shen Qiao's body. Shen Qiao's stance, however, remained flawless. His sword technique became much more steady. He went against Yan Shao with an offensive strength that resembled that of strong wind and swift rain. Without Yan Wushi by his side, he was even more able to concentrate on responding to the situation before him. The wind resonated against the Shan He Tongbei sword, while his figure, dressed completely in teal, fluttered with a celestial essence. The Kanglang sword technique was an infinitely majestic scene to witness after having improved with Shen Qiao's skill. It washed over the land with great ease, like that of thousands of flowers in bloom. Its light filled every corner of the sky, completely engulfing the three of them within it, preventing them from approaching any closer. Yan Shao scoffed lowly to himself. Suddenly, a human figure appeared with such speed. One would be unable to tell the difference from the points of this person's slender fingers from that of a sharp blade. Wherever they went transformed into a sea of blood and corpses, and suddenly, their hand broke through the sea of light from the sword, before directly grabbing the sword Shen Qiao grasped. Shen Qiao flew on his return. The blue of his silhouette resembled that of a dragonfly skimming the surface of water, wanting to touch the ground, but always remaining just above it. The tips of his toes seemed as though they never before did touch the ground. The Tianqiu Hongying was Xuandu Mountain's unique Qinggong technique, and Shen Qiao used it with such perfection. Had Qi Fengge been able to see this, even he would not be able to suppress his praise for him. The two rows of trees on either side of his body quickly faded behind him the longer he used this Qinggong technique, growing indistinct in the distance. Even his merciless pursuers from behind disappeared temporarily without a trace. But Shen Qiao would not lower his guard as a result. He took a sigh of relief. His robes were lifted by the wind, untouched by the dirt beneath him. His grace resembled that of a bird, though perhaps only somewhat inferior. This route went quickly. He had to first pass by the mountains outside the city, so as to deceive his pursuers. Afterwards, he had to follow the sheltered area beneath the mountain, before reaching the small grove by the foot of the mountain that one would need to enter if they were on their way to the city. Although this grove of trees was certainly not large, it relied on its lush and green position by the mountain. Its verdant color made it resemble a part of the earth. Had any ordinary person entered this place, they would have almost seemed to have been swallowed whole by the forest, with its long entanglement of vines and rugged terrain. They would certainly not be able to find a way out of it. Shen Qiao supported himself with the trunks of each tree as he went further into the forest. Though he had slowed down greatly, he made sure that he did not leave even the slightest trace of his steps. Even if their enemies were to chase them into this area, they would not be able to determine whether or not they have entered it. He walked for as long as it took a stick of incense to burn. Already, he could see that he had entered the very depths of the forest, and would quickly reach the area by that of the mountain. He finally could not bear it any longer, and stopped for a moment to rest. His wrist was grabbed by someone's hand, which had extended past him without warning. Shen Qiao was vigilant and sensed this, before trying to pull his hand away and retreat. However, after seeing the other man's face, he stopped, and sighed. "It's me," Yan Wushi said. He had grasped Shen Qiao's wrist in one hand, while his other was supporting his waist, helping him walk further into the forest. "Why did it take you so long to get rid of them?" Shen Qiao had exhausted all of his strength, and allowed Yan Wushi to support him by the arm. He leaned half of his weight somewhat into the other man's body. "Of course, if it were only those three I had to deal with, there wouldn't be any reason for anxiety," Shen Qiao said. "I had wanted to kill Yan Shao to avenge the Guanzu and Chui. I didn't expect that behind him would be yet another person dressed as a monk. They seemed younger than Bai Rong, yet their Wujiang was not beneath that of Yan Shao. The longer we fought, the more unfavorable it became for me. I could only find an opportunity to escape." He did not know what the identity of this person was, but Yan Wushi knew at first mention, that person is most likely Baiyun. They are one of the elders of Hehuan sect. He likes to pretend to be a monk and spread Buddhist teachings all over the country. That way, he can fool a number of worshippers that are women and sleep with them. The Buddhists hate him for dirtying the good reputation of monks, and have repeatedly hunted him down in recent years. He rarely shows his face to the outside world, yet his Wujiang is hardly beneath that of Yan Shao's. After hearing the actions of this man, Shen Qiao could not help but frown, his expression filled with disgust. Earlier, Bai Rong said that Shang Jingxing and Baiyun were just behind them. If Baiyun is here, then Sang Jingxing is most likely not far from them either. We need to get away from here as soon as we can. Otherwise, with how many people are on their side, it'll be unlikely that they'll leave this place unsearched. Are you able to move?" Yan Wushi asked. Shen Qiao smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I have a way," Yan Wushi said. Yan Wushi stroked Shen Qiao's face, which was ashen from having exhausted his strength. Shen Qiao turned away, though the other man was able to have stroked it once. Shen Qiao glared at him, but Yan Wushi laughed. "Sang Jingxing was heavily wounded because of you, so naturally his hate for you is so deep that it reaches into his bones. But Hehuan sect's other members don't carry any similar grudge against you. Rather, they greatly fear you. You should leave this place on your own. Don't worry about me any longer. You should focus on ridding yourself of them, instead of burdening yourself even more with me. Shen Qiao sighed, I thought that you were actually going to come up with a good plan. Stop with your nonsense already. Let's head up the mountain first. Is this not a good plan? Yan Wushi asked. If I had wanted to get rid of you from the start, Shen Qiao said, why would I wait until now? If I am to save a life, I will go through with it completely, as one would escort the Buddha to the West. If I lend my hand to you in the beginning, then I will naturally do all I can for as long as I can. The two of them continued forwards. Shen Qiao, after having completely used his Qinggong to his utmost power, now felt that every step demanded too much effort. He could not help but say, I really can't move anymore. You head up first, and I'll cover for you here. Yan Wushi laughed, Ah Qiao, you're really so cute. If I were to rely on you covering for me with your present state, then once Sang Jingxin comes around, he'll eat you right up, bones and all. Before Shen Qiao could respond, he felt the ground disappear from beneath his feet as the other man carried him on his back. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.